And here we turn to Daf Mem Zayin Amid Beis, Tevel v'chulin muravim ze b'zeh. We don't say that later on, when they divvy up the shutfis, and we find out which half of the Sada belongs to the Yisrael, that Igloi Milsalim Afreya, that it always belonged to the Yisrael, because we're holding now Ein Brera. But rather each chita, every single piece of, every kernel of wheat is both Tevel and Chulin Muravim Zebazeh, Divrei Rebbe. So Rebbe is predicated on, as we'll see in a minute, on the principle of Ein Brer. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, Shalo v'kochom pata shel Yisrael chayav yesh brera. And therefore, once they divvy up the field, on that part of the field that was given and granted to the Yisrael, there will be a chiyuv trumas ha'maisros. On that part that was divvied up for the akum, designated for the akum, there's a ptur. I'd call no plea the Mars medayik. Ela de Mars Savar, according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, brera yesh brera. Mars Savar Rebbe disagrees and he holds ain't brera. Aval de kuli alma. No one denies that the chelik of the akum is potum maser, which means yesh kinyan liove kocham beretz Yisrael afkim de maser. We see clearly Rabbi Elazar's shita that the ownership of a guy is mafkia kedushas Eretz Yisrael, and the Gemara rejects it. Hachanami, even in this Tosefta, we're talking about Surya. And we said about Surya that even though we hold that Ein Kinyan Akum Lafkia, and again I apologize because I accidentally wrote the Rabbi Elazar. I'm sorry, I meant to say Rabba. All right, I'll have to fix this up later on. So even though according to Rava, we hold that Ein Kinyan Akum Lafkia, and this should be a chiyuv. 1 second. But nevertheless, we're going to be mekil in Surya. Why? Because here the chiyuv trumas ha'mais is only to Rabbanon, and we're going to accept the principle of Rabbi Elazar. Even Rabbah is going to concede to Rabbi Elazar that yesh kinyan li'akum lafkia. And the Gemara goes through the same logic. So therefore, it's not considered kibush on a doraisa level, and it doesn't have kedushas Eretz Yisrael because it's Surya, and it was conquered by David before he conquered the rest of Eretz Yisrael. And since the chiyuv karka of Maser is only the Rabbanan in Surya, therefore, even Rabbah would agree that the chiyuv is paka by virtue of the kinyan of Akum. I'm going to bring our Mishnah in order to establish Rabbi Elazar that yesh kinyan li'akum. Hamolcher sadei li'om chovim lokechu mevi bikurim. And why? According to Rabbah, this should be a din doraisa. Why? Because ein kinyan akum lafkia. So there's a chiyuv doraisa of bikurim. And yet, the Mishnah says that they tikkun olam. So the Gemara is medayik, they tikkun olam in midoraisa lo. So you see the yesh kinyan li'akum lafkia kedushas karka like Rabbi Elazar. Otherwise, the Mishnah should have said that it's a doraisa halacha, and the chiyuv bikurim is doraisa. And the Gemara rejects it. Amar Rav Ashi. You didn't find it?
No, one for so one for is that one.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not taking it.
Shtei takonos havu. In truth, the chiyuv of bikurim here in our Mishnah is doraisa, because we're holding now and defending Rabbi Shita that ain kinyan liakum. But there were two different takonos, historically, chronologically. Meikara, initially, have a maisi midaraisa. They were selling their karkos, and they were fulfilling their chiyuv doraisa bikurim, because we're holding now like Rabba, ein kinyan akum lafkia. However, it became almost maisim b'chol yom that people were selling their karka to the goyim, and even if they were very religious, very pious, and they were makayim the mitzvahs of mitzvah tluyos ba'aretz like bikurim, but nevertheless they were violating the isa of lo seichanim by giving chania in Eretz Yisrael to the goyim. So came into Chazal, the Chacham realized the Mikri Mezavne, that people were selling their karka to goyim. Imagine you have a poor person, and he has to sell the roof over his head, and his only buyer at this point is an akum, and he has no problem over here. He's not aware of the Isur of Lo Seichanim. He thinks that the only problem is to be mafkia kedushas Eretz Yisrael, but sabri kedushas kaimah. We're holding now like Rabbah that ein kinyan liakum, so he's not being mafkia the kedushas Eretz Yisrael from the karka, so he feels perfectly at home selling his karka to a guy for the sake of getting money. Correct, but al piemis, he's not allowed to sell his karka to a guy for a different reason, not because of afkos kedush Eretz Yisrael, but because of the lav lo sichanin. Is tiknu lahu? The Rabbanan figured they'd make the following takana, the siad and the geder l'dova, the l'laisu, that they should not bring bikurim for the karka. They're going to sort of like mislead the people into thinking that yesh that yesh kinyan liakum lafkia kedushas Eretz Yisrael. And why will the people derive that conclusion? Because they're not bringing bikurim. So they know now that they're not allowed to sell the karka because they're being mafkia the kedusha, they're being mafkia the mitzvah bikurim, etc., etc. So they accomplished their goal of inhibiting people from selling the karka to Eretz Yisrael to a guy. But now, in a later stage, historically, came into Chazal, they realized the Chacham. The mandalo sagile, if somebody is really, really down and out destitute, and he's desperate for money, mizamin, he's going to sell the karka to Ovi Kochavan, despite the fact that he knows that he's not allowed to do that because he's being mafkia the mitzvah of bikurim and kedushas Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, they had to make another takon. Become ishtakon biyad Ovi Kochavan. These poor people who were selling their land in Eretz Yisrael to a guy, the land remained or would remain for all posterity in the possession of the guy, which is a violation of the Isur Lo Sichanim, Lo Se'alem Chania Be'eretz Yisrael. So Hada Tiknulu Delaise, they made a second takana, which really reflects the original situation before the first takana, that they should bring bikurim, which they're chayev in Doraisa, because we're holding like Rabbah that ein kinyan liakum lafkia. And what are they going to do now with the new takana? They're going to have to spend a lot of money in order to redeem the karka from the guy who purchased the karka. And now they can fulfill the mitzvah tluyos ba'aretz because we're holding now ein kinyan liakum. And when it says in the Mishnah of Neitikun Olam, that's only because in a historical perspective, it's a bittul of the original takana, but the chiyuv itself is doraisa, according to Rab. Now we get to a new sugya, which is also a sugya bikurim and a machlokes In Kol Kula, this appears in so many different places in Shas. Machlokas Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, whether Kinyan Peres ki Kinyan Aguftu. Itma. Hamocher Sadeh Leperos. So we're going to see that there are two scenarios in which a person sells his karka only for the rights to reap and harvest the pears of the karka. And so in scenario number one, Ruvain sold his karka to Shimon for peros. Shimon only owns the peros, the rights to own and possess the peros that grow on this karka. And we have another situation, and that's called nichse maluk. When a man writes a ksuba to his wife, he gains rights in any karka that she owns and brings into the marriage to eat the peros. So the Baal has what's called a kinyan peros. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mevi Vekore. He has a full-fledged chiyuv bikurim. And why is that? As the Gemara is going to explain, because Rabbi Yochanan holds kinyan peros ki kinyan aguf tami. Reish Lakish Amar Mevi Vekore. In the parsha bikurim, it says V'yato yinei vesias reishis pri adama asher nasato li Hashem. So it's got to be nasato li. And I have to own it. And if I only own the peros, says Reish Lakish, I don't own the gufa karka. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mevi Vekori is chayav in bikurim. It's considered nasato li. And why is that? Because Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that kinyan peros ki kinyan agufta. Reish Lakish Amar Mevi Vekori kinyan peros lav ki kinyan agufta mi. Rabbi Yochanan, I'm sorry. Rabbi Yochanan maybe kore kinyan peres kinyan agufta. Reish Lakish maybe veinu kore. Why? Because kinyan peres lav kinyan agufta. Now notice that the machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish revolves around mikra bikurim. Because in the parsha of Kriyas Mikra Bikurim, which is the parsha in Kitovo, the Torah says Pri Hadama, and what's this Hadama? Shenasato li Hashem. That's in Kriya. Reish Lakish, who says that the pasuk li excludes the kinyan peros, he says mevi v'eno kore. So it means as far as the ikar chiyuv of bikurim, he's chayav in bikurim, but just he cannot fulfill the mitzvah of mikra bikurim. And here we have a tremendous machlokes rishonim. Is this chiyuv, according to Reish Lakish, of havas bikurim, not mikra bikurim, is it doraisa or derabbanan? The Rashbam in Baba Basra holds that this is a chiyuv doraisa. Why? Because it says in the pasuk in Parshas Kisava v'lakachta me'rishis kol pri adom asher tovi me'artzacha. Tosas disagrees. And he says that when the Torah says me'artzacha, it means that he has a kinyan in the karka. And Reish Lakish holds no kinyan in the gufa karka. Esvei, Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan tries to prove from a brisa that kinyan peres ki kinyan aguftami. In the Parsha Bikurim in Kitov, it says v'samachtu chalatov shenasan. We always assume that Beisecha is his wife. So now we're going to have a discussion about Nichse Milu. Beisecha Malamit Sha'odam Mevi Bikure Ishto Vikore. So when the karka, which is Nichse Milu, that she brought into the marriage, produces peros, then the chiyuv on the husband's part is Mevi Vikore. Now, what's going on over here? Nichse Malug means that the gufa karka belongs to her. The Baal only has chus achilas peros. So we see clearly that kinyan peros is kinyan aguftami. And therefore the Baal could recite bikurim adoma shenasato li. And this proves the shita of Rabbi Yochanan. Now here there's a pella because the entire institution of Nichse Malug is only a Takanas Chachamim. And that's because Ksuba Lavdo Raisa Domi. So how could it be that the Torah had to add an extra pasuk to teach us that the Baal is Mevi V'Korei? How could the Torah be talking about Mevi V'Korei when on a Deraisa level, the Karka belongs to her completely? Even the Peros belong to her. It was only a Takanas Chachamim that they established that the Baal gets a kinyan as chus for Peros. So Tosas says that the Minhag Olam, even at the time of the Torah, before the institution of Ksuba, was that a woman gave her Peros, the Peros of Menachasim, to her husband. And in that scenario, the Torah establishes that the Baal could be Mevi V'Korei, and Rabbi Yochanan proves from this that kinyan Peros ki kinyan aguf. Amalei Reish Lakish rejects it. Shani Hasam Dichsivu Beisecha. Now we're going to see in the Ikad Diamri that Adarabah, this is a kash on Rabbi Yochanan. Why do we need the pasuk Beisecha? If the husband has kinyan Peros, then for sure he's chayav in Kriyas Parshas Bikurim. But Reish Lakish says the separate din. The Torah added the word Beisecha to establish that the Baal is Mevi V'Korei. And the Rishonim say that this is a result of or reflection of the principle called Baal Ke'ishto. And that gives the Baal some sort of a kinyan beguf hakarka. But according to Reish Lakish, it's a separate halacha. It's an exception to the rule rather than the rule. Ikar Diamri, others say, Esvei, Reb Shimon Lakish, Reb Yochanan, this very same brisa now is being invoked by Reish Lakish as a kasha against Reb Yochanan. Why? Because we need a pasuk of Lebeisecha, if not for the extra Yitur Akra and the drush of the Ribuy of Lebeisecha, we would have said that the Baal is potter. Why? Because kinyan aguf lav ki kinyan peros, and he can't say that this is adoma shenasato li. So Hasam, who in that case of Baal v'ishto, because of the principle Baal ki ishto, t'chsivu l'beisecha, therefore he's chayav, and he can recite the parsha of nasato li. Avol b'yam, if not for that extra pasuk, if he only had a kinyan peros, lo, he's excluded from kriyas haparsha. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan responds, this pasuk b'leisecha is my source, my basis from which I derive the conclusion that kinyan peros is considered like a kinyan aguf. This is not an exception to the rule, rather a binyan av. Esvei, Reish Lakish asks another question of Rabbi Yochanan from a brisa. Hoya bava derech. He was on his way to the Beis Hamikdash, bringing his bikurim, and bikurei ishto biyado. He wants to bring the bikurim from his wife, meaning from her karka. V'shama nebach shemesa ishto is mevi v'korei. So the Gemara asks the following: this Reish Lakish's diuk, mesa in, lo mesa lo. As a general rule, he would not bring the bikurim of his wife's karka because kinyan aguf, kinyan peres lav kinyan aguf tomi, but it's only because she died. Now here we have a basic difficulty in the Shakla V'Tari of the Gemara. Reish Lakish was modeh from the previous brisa that we proved that even if his wife did not die, the Baal is Mevi V'Korei, and that was derived from the extra pasuk Ula Beisecha. So we're talking about Ishto over here, the second brisa that Reish Lakish is quoting, and in the case of Ishto, everybody agrees that maybe V'Korei, even Reish Lakish concedes because of the extra pasuk L'Beischa. So Tosas answers that Reish Lakish's kasha is that even the first brisa we can explain in a case of Mesa Ishta. So Gemara answers the following. Hu adin, the halacha of maybe v'korei in terms of the Baal, with regard to the nichsei malug of his wife, is the afal gavdalo Mesa, even if she didn't die, he would be chayav in bikurim and maybe v'korei, because kinyan aguf according to Reish Lakish, according to Rabbi Yochanan is kinyan peiros is kinyan agufta. But Mesa itzrichle, we would have a havamin in the case of Mesa. There should be a gzera d'rabbanan, a siyag, that he should not be korei mikra bikurim. Why? The case of a shliach. So what happens if you send your peiros of bikurim to the Beis Hamikdash biyad shaliach, and the shliach dies? Here we have the halacha of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. The Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina bitzaran if he harvests his bikurim, and usually the word bitziras are referred to the vines. This shigron, he sent the grapes of bikurim biyad shliach to bring to the Beis Hamikdash. Umeis hashliach b'derech. The Mishnah, the shliach is on his way to the Beis Hamikdash, and he dies on the way. And the Baal HaGefen now takes the anovim from that place where the shliach died, and he continues the process and brings them to the Beis Hamikdash. Is meivi v'enu korei. In this case, we have a hekesh between lekicha and hava. It's got to be the same person who did the lekicha does the hava. Maybe v'enu korei shenemar. The pasuk says in Parashas Kisavo v'lakachta, and then it says ve'vesa, and we derive from this that the mitzvah of mikra bikurim is conditional at shetei lekicha v'hava bi'echad. That the bailim who did the lekicha, they will do the hava. Okay, now here, the lekichas habikurim was al yidei ashliach, and we would say that even if his wife dies baderech, there should be no kriya. Why? Because people are going to equate this with the case and the scenario of the shliach. They're going to think that the Baal should not have been roy likros even while his wife was alive. But because she died baderech, therefore he is rashoy likros. They're going to think that even if a shliach began the hava, but the bailim, after the death of the shliach, continued and completed the hava, the bailim could be korei the pasha of bikurim. And therefore, we would have a havamina because of this dimion, that people would make a dimion and equate the two scenarios of Mesa Ishta with Mesa Shliach. We should make a gzera that there should be no din of Mevi v'Korei. Kamash Malon, the Bryce wants to teach us that we don't accept this gzera, because even before his wife died, he was Korei. He was chayiv in mikra bikurim because kinyan peiros kinyan agufta according to Rabbi Yochanan, and it's not similar to the case of havas bikurim yidei shliach where there was no hava yidei abayim. Biaslu tamayu, this machlokas Rabbi Yochanan shlokish by kinyan peiros, whereas kinyan agufta or not, is an old machlokas. The itmar we learned to the base medrash. Hamocher sadeyu. Here we turn to memches bisman shayovel noeg. So the mechira during the Yovel period is only on the peiros. The karka will go back with Yovel to its original owner. Rabbi Yochanan Omar Mevi v'Korei is chayav and bikurim with mikra bikurim as well, and he could recite Hadama Shanasato Li because the mechira was valid as far as kinyan peiros and kinyan peiros kinyan aguf. Shlokish Amar Mevi V'Eino Kore. Why? Because Kinyan Peros Lavki Kinyan Aguf, and Bisman Noeg, the Mechir was only on Kinyan Peros. Rabbi Yochanan Mevi V'Kore Kinyan Peros Kinyan Agufta Shlokish Amar Mevi V'Eino Kore Kinyan Peros Lavki Kinyan Agufta. And now the next sugya is the sugya of utzricha. What do I mean? We need two explicit presentations of the machlokas Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, and we could not derive one from the other. So we need the machlokas Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish with regard to peros of ishto, meaning nichsei malug, and we need again the machlokas Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish kinyan peros in the case of mocher sadeu Isman Shehayovel Noah. And that's going to be the next sugya Mitzvah Hashem for tomorrow. Thank you so much. Shavua Tov, and have a great day.